It's February 2014. We have had another record-breaking season of weather. Doesn't seem to be a season go by without the weather records being broken, and this time we have had the wettest winter on record. So as I say, it's February 2014. Welcome to Self-Sufficient in Suburbia. As you can see, we are suffering from mud, and more mud at the moment. All the rain that we've had an unbelievable amount of rain. This is the duckling run that we built a few weeks ago. It's got 4 ducklings in that we hatched at towards the end of last year. Our plan today is to dismantle the duckling run and then let the ducklings free to wander around the allotment. The aim is to get these guys to integrate with the adult group that we've got here on the allotment already. And they're the adult ducks. And we're hoping our new ducklings will join. It's now sort of early-ish February and we're up on Dad's allotment now. I've got to confess, this is one of the patches that we don't come to often enough, and one of my confessions to add to that is that we had a potato crop in here that was planted last year, and we didn't harvest it last year either, and we came up today assuming that it would be rotting in the ground, and interestingly it was fine. So we've managed to dig up all the potatoes, and they'll go back to the house, and what we'll do is we'll dry them out before we store them. But if we come this way, this is the bed that we had the potatoes on, and as you can see it's all been dug up. And here we have the kale that we planted in the autumn, and it's doing rather well, so we're rather pleased with that, so we'll be harvesting that a bit soon. And over on the bed there, I have discovered, and again this is a mistake that we shouldn't allow to happen again, I've discovered an onion crop that we forgot to get in last year. Now that's still in the ground, so I'm going to come up later in the week to get that harvested. As you can see, it's getting quite dark now, the sun will be down in just a few minutes, so this is the end of the activities on this allotment for today. These are the potatoes that we harvested yesterday, and we've brought them back home. They're in this sack here, and I'm spreading them out on newspapers for a few hours so that we can dry them off, because the last thing you want to do is to store your potatoes when they're still got wet, slightly wet earth on them. And we'll dry them off and then we'll rub off the soil that's on them. But if anybody were to come to my house this afternoon, they will be greeted by a long line of drying potatoes, which is typical of the mad things you'd expect in our house. That's them all now laid out. So we'll leave them there for a few hours, dust them down, and then they'll go into storage and we'll use them over the next few months. These are some of the potatoes that we picked the other day on the allotment, and what we're going to do now is make one of my favourite dinners, and that's pan haggerty. Into a pan put your sliced potatoes and then heat them to boil them. Whilst you're waiting for the pan to come up to heat, chop some onions and grate some cheese. When the pan's come up to the boil, turn it down and let it simmer for about 10 minutes or so. Once the potatoes are cooked through, remove them from the water and put them in the bottom of the pan, and then put a layer of onions over, and then a sprinkling of cheese, and then do the same again with any remaining potatoes and onions. Just put a pile on, just put them on in a layer until all the ingredients are used up, and then leave that to simmer on a reasonably low heat for about 20 minutes to half an hour. You don't want it on too high a heat, or else you'll end up incinerating everything at the bottom of the pan. There we go. And the cheese, and put the lid on to make sure it cooks through. Now, that's the pan of the water that I boiled the potatoes in. Don't throw away the water. That is an excellent base for a soup, but I see so many people who boil up their vegetables and then throw away the water that they've boiled them in, and what a waste, because that water contains so many nutrients from the vegetables. So don't waste it, use it to make a soup. After about 20 minutes I took the lid off, and that was just to get some of the excess liquid driven off, and I reckon this is about ready. I quite like the bottom quite crispy and reasonably well done, which I think it is. So as I said earlier, a really easy meal to make, but I love this because it's a great way of using up lots of potatoes and onions that we grow on the allotment, but I think it just tastes great as well. But I'm not a trained cook or chef, so if I can make this, anybody can. We're halfway through February, and winter this year has been very mild but very wet, and that means that we're going to have to get these artichokes out of the ground and get them used up as soon as possible, or else they'll start sprouting before we get the chance to use them. And the thing about artichokes is that they're best stored in the ground because in the house they tend to dry out and become a bit unusable. So we're thinking up lots of recipes at the moment to get these used up. So what we're going to do back in the kitchen now is make them into a very simple and straightforward soup. So in the kitchen, chop your artichokes, then you will need a few potatoes, chop them as well, and some onions. Really the quantities are very much up to you, and then stick that up into the pan. Next job, fill the pan with water and then add a couple of stock cubes and a handful of bay leaves. We're not using fresh ones, we're just using dry ones because we've got absolute mountain to use up, but fresh would be even better if you can get them. They go in, and then very much to taste, some Marmite and a big dollop like that into the pan as well. Once it starts boiling, turn the temperature down and let it simmer for about half an hour. This is now ready to be served. Now you can blend it if you want to, but I'm going to keep it whole. So here we have one really simple and very easy to make soup, dead simple recipe, and tastes fine. Good, it's good. Good soup. We're in the goat paddock. We extended it a few weeks ago, and this is the goat house. It's made of these two sheets of, I think they're from a conservatory roof, and there is the toolbox that we have, and we converted that into a goat house last year. But it's not going to be big enough if we want to get some more goats. It suits the two goats that we have now. They managed to fit in there, they're nice and snug, but no room for any more goats. So today we're going to have a go at building a new goat house. So these are the bits for the shed here. It's actually a bicycle shed, and we bought it down at the local DIY centre, so it fitted the bill perfectly for what we wanted. So it even comes with its own instruction book, well, instruction sheet of paper. So we'll be wading our way through that, and hopefully in a few hours this will all be built. It may be the middle of February and we may have had loads and loads of rain recently, but today is a sunny day and it's warm enough to bring the bees out as well. In fact, they're coming out in quite significant numbers, as you can see. I don't think there's much in the way of nectar foraging for them, but the hazel catkins are out, so that will provide them with a pollen source. And actually there's the hive next to that one is also getting quite busy as well. This is some of the liver from our Tamworth pig, and this is some of the absolutely gorgeous bacon that we got from our Tamworth pig as well. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to combine these two together to make a liver and bacon casserole. First job is to slice your liver and then put it into some seasoned flour. Make sure that it's all fully coated. Like so. Then once that's done, you need to add your liver to the casserole pan. Put it in a layer on the bottom. Just make sure each slice is fully coated. Now, there's no hard and set rules on what needs to go in, but we certainly do need to get your bacon ready and chop off the rind and then chop the bacon into pieces. And then we've also added in some onions. We've chopped into about 8. Two reasonably sized onions, and we're also adding in some mushrooms, and straight from the herb garden is a bit of thyme. Well, obviously it needs to cook in a liquid, and what we're going to do is use beer for that, a bottle of beer and a stock cube. If there's not sufficient liquid in the pan, then just add a bit of water to it. Well, this is now ready to go into the oven at 200 degrees centigrade for about half an hour. After half an hour we checked it, gave it a stir, decided needed a few minutes more. It's been on another 15 minutes since then, and it's now ready to come out of the oven and to be served up. Well, we're having this with baked potatoes, but here goes. Lovely. Yeah, absolutely lovely. Nectar here is one of our ambers, and her full name is Amber Nectar, and she is an amber, and one of our 20 hens. Ooh. But yesterday I spotted she wasn't eating, and that's normally a sign to keep an eye on them. And then this morning I noticed she didn't come out of the hen house when I opened them all up. So I brought her back home and just gave her an examination, and found that her crop is still full of food, even though she wasn't eating much yesterday. And it seems to me that she's got a blocked crop, and I'm massaging it now, and I can feel what feels like wheat in there. And the crop is a bag of muscle tissue that basically all the food that they eat through the day gathers in the crop, and then the hens go off to roost and the food is then digested. Partly digested in the crop, but basically that happens, most of the digestion, the digestive system happens through the night. But if she can't shift the crop, shift the block in the crop, she's going to be in a bit of trouble. Now, the blockages in crops are normally caused by them eating long fibrous material, such as long grass. And I'm massaging the crop now to try and break up that lump of food that's in there. And hopefully if that happens, that will break up the blockage, and she can then digest the food. So 3 or 4 times today I'm going to massage her, and if that doesn't work, then it becomes a bit more messy, because we then have to sort of turn her, not quite on her head, but at quite a steep angle, and then try to get her to regurgitate what she's got in there, which I don't particularly want to have to do, because that would be rather messy. So hopefully Amber here, Nectar here, is going to get a bit better after a few massages. Aren't you, Bet? It's now a day since we took Amber Nectar home, and the massaging her crop certainly worked. We kept her in overnight just to check she was okay, and she is fine. So we have brought her back to the allotment this morning and released her in with the rest of the flock and with the ducks, who you can probably hear in the background, and she's been eating well, so she is now fine. So a little massage to unblock a blocked crop, and she's right as rain. So I'm going to let her go now. Well, I've just got back home from a meeting, and as you can see, I've been greeted by this rather lovely sight. The quails have started hatching. Now, they're a day earlier than I expected, and there's 3 already hatched, but there's one there which is just coming out of the egg now on the right. Well, last night 5 of the eggs hatched, and I moved the chicks into the brooder, but I've just come in here this morning just to have a check on the remaining eggs, and one has already hatched, and we've got a second one which is in the middle of hatching. And well, the egg next to the chick there is taking some time to hatch, so what I'm going to do is show you the other chicks that hatched last night. I'm going to start them off in this old fish tank that we've got, and we put the brooder in there, and they're all under there now. You just see them wandering around. So I've taken the lid off, and I'll take the brooder out, and there they are. 5 of them, tiny little things. They're about the size of a 50p piece. the old 50p pieces, not the new ones. So we've got 5 there, 1 in the incubator and 1 hatching in the incubator, and we started off with 12 eggs, so it's not too bad a hatch rate. However, they are quite hungry little things, so we've fed them on the chick crumbs and they seem to rather like them. And we've got a saucer of water, very shallow, because what we don't want is for them to drown in it, so we haven't given them a big bowl, we've just given them a saucer. And now you can see we've got a tablecloth down there on the floor of the aquarium. That's just going to be there for a couple of days. It's to give them a bit of grip for the first few days, and then we'll take that out and replace it with wood shavings.